Hi, I'm Josh, one of the co-founders of Zuplo, and in this guided video tour, I'm going to give you a light speed run through some of the key features of the product. In just about 10 minutes or so, we're going to set up a gateway in front of a demo backend. We're going to add a developer portal, rate limiting, API key authentication, a custom policy to do roles-based access control, and we're going to deploy that to multiple data centers around the world using GitHub with simple native IAC built in. Everything about Zuplo is designed for productivity and optimal developer efficiency. And that means whilst I'm giving you this demo in the web browser, everything I'm about to do, you can do in your favorite IDE like Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code or JetBrains or whatever it is. You can even run the gateway locally on your own machine and step through debug the code policies. That's the Zuplo difference. What I'm going to do right now is create a new project here called, let's call it Lightspeed Demo, and this will give you a real sense of just how fast everything in Zuplo operates. So the gateway will actually be live typically in about 10 to 20 seconds. I'm not even going to accelerate this. I'm just going to sit here and wait for it, and there it is. The gateway is now live. We're going to go over to the code view and take a look at some of the files that will actually power the gateway. Everything in Zuplo is just a text file. So when you're using Visual Studio Code or your favorite IDE, that's what you're going to see in the file tree, and it all just works. This is the most important file in the gateway. It is the oas.json file, and you can have multiple of them in a project. OAS stands for OpenAPI specification. So Zuplo is natively powered by an OpenAPI doc, which leads to the best workflow for importing and remerging your external changes to Swagger or OpenAPI and power that gateway. Now, since I'm giving a demo of a gateway, I need a backend, and I am just going to use this simple to-dos API that returns a list of to-dos as our backend. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to come in here and add a route called get all to-dos. We're going to add a little bit of versioning here that shows that we're able to abstract what's happening on the back end. We'll do a URL rewrite, and I will save my change, and that change will be live in about 5 to 10 seconds. So there we go, that's live already. So I can test this. I can actually just hit it, and there you go. You can see that we're loading those to-do items, but now we're doing it through my Zuplo gateway. So let's go and add some policy magic. This is how we identify the incoming requests. This is the handler and what we do with it on the back end. This section is where we get to do magic in terms of the intercepting of requests and responses. We can add policies here. We have a huge list of policies built in. I'm going to do some rate limiting real quick. I'm going to add simple rate limiting like IP-based rate limiting. I'll save that, and then I'll explain that actually the Zuplo rate limiter is the best rate limiter on the planet. It is truly distributed around the edge, synchronized at the speed of light, and is programmable. So you can have, one customer have a different rate limit to another one very, very easily. Just to show that's working now, I'm going to come here. Actually, let's just go and refresh that twice. So once, twice, I got too many requests and a 429 because I added a rate limit of 1 request per minute. So that's working already. Now we're going to add some authentication. We support all of the authentication options you could dream of, from MTLS to Auth0 to any type of JWT to basic auth, and then authorization policies like AuthZen and Okta FGA. All built in. I'm going to show API key authentication. I think that's the best option for B2B APIs, and we think we have the best solution for that. So I'm going to add that policy. I'll drag it in front of the rate limiter. I'll click save. That will be deployed in a matter of seconds again. And then just to prove that is working, I'm going to come here, hit refresh, and now we get a 401 unauthorized, showing that the gateway has been secured. I now need to create an API key. So I'm going to come over here and click on the API key service, click configure. You could use this using our API, but I'm going to use the UI because I'm just giving a demo. I'm going to create a key called test. I'm going to make me the manager, josh@zuplo.com. I'm going to do that because I'm giving the demo. But if your customer was Contoso, then you could add several people from contoso.com as managers of the key. So I'm going to set up a customer ID property here that would be available to the gateway. And then just in case we want to do some roles-based access control, I'm going to set up a little bit of data here in this JSON payload that says this key has one role and it's of type basic, and we'll use that later in the demo, so stay tuned. One of the cool things about Zuplo is that we are partners with GitHub on the secret scanning capabilities. So if you're going to do API key authentication, you need to do that securely. And that means doing things like GitHub secret scanning. We're the only gateway that I know of that is partnered with GitHub in this way. If one of our keys gets checked into GitHub, we get notified, we can revoke that key and send you a Slack message or a webhook or an email, whatever you want to do. So keeping your users secure whilst using the best and easiest to use API key option, Zuplo is the best way to do it. Now I could get my key here, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the developer portal that we have generated based on the API definition. So if I come here now, you'll see that we have this, you can style this, we support dark mode, you can change the colors, but this is effectively what the developer portal can look like. It can actually be taken much further. So we can customize the code in here to show us how different code samples to call the API. We can even invoke the API. Now I don't have an API key, so I'm going to get a 401 unauthorized. But since you're using Zuplo, we can help you with self-serve API key management. So I'm just going to sign in here as josh@zuplo.com. You can do this using your own IDP. But notice now I can access the test key. And there is my key in all its glory. I can roll that key. I can view request logs. And I can test that key and it's automatically plugged it in for me. So if I click test, there we go. You can see that I'm getting my 200 OK. Now, I left that rate limiter in place. So if I keep hitting this, I'm going to get a 429 too many requests. But the other cool thing here is I can view my logs. So as a developer, I can sort of debug my own usage of my API key and see here that I've got a 200, a 429, and that I got these calls, and I am indeed in Fulham in London right now, and that's my call history. This is what we call a Stripe quality experience. We want to help you give your API consumers, be them internal, partners, or customers, have a great experience using your API, and that's what we try and do with Zuplo out of the box. The next thing I want to show you very quickly here is how to customize your gateway by adding custom code. Very simple. So we're going to come in here, click code. I'm going to add a new policy called RBAC. And what we're going to do is actually on this endpoint, we're going to make this endpoint such that in order to call this, you have to have an admin permission on your key. And if you remember, the user we created only had a basic permission. So I'm going to say the definition of the options for the policy there. So that's where I tell the policy that I want the user to have a role of a string, and I'll use admin as the example here. And then we write the code inside the policy. So if request.user.data.roles.includes options.role, then return request. And what that does is says to the gateway, please continue, I'm happy, return the request, but I could change that request. I could add headers or change the type from XML to JSON or something, but I'm not going to do that. And if it's not in that role, then we're going to return a new response that says, something fun now, but you do something more professional. Wrong role, please upgrade your role. You would do something nicer, which we can help with our problem detail standard. But for the demo, I'm just going to do that. And then we're going to say status 403. I will save that. That's my policy. And then we're going to add that policy by adding a custom code policy here. Type RBAC. And the role we require on this endpoint is now admin. So I've specified that here. So if I try and call this API, let's just put that in front of the rate limiter. Click save. If I try and call that API with a basic key, it's going to get a nasty error message. So let's take a look, come back to my API reference, hit test here, and then I get wrong role, please upgrade your role, which is the error message we just created. So that's how easy it is to customize your gateway. This is a full programming environment to the point where we actually have hundreds of customers that build their entire API on Zuplo. It's not what I'm suggesting you do, but it's definitely a possibility and shows you how flexible it is as a gateway. Last part of this demo, we're almost done, is to connect this to GitHub to do deployment. So I'm going to go to GitHub here. I'm going to connect to a repository. I'll create a new repository right now called Lightspeed Demo. Let's make it private to show that we support that. We also work with Bitbucket and GitLab and Azure DevOps. But I'm going to come back here. That will refresh. I will connect that. That's going to associate my project with my GitHub repo. And if I come back here, you'll see, and this is one of the beautiful things about Zuplo, everything is just a text file. as you can see here. Literally just a bunch of text files. So all that you need to do to deploy Zuplo is commit to Git and magic will happen. And there you go. You can see we're actually deploying the API, in this case, to 20 data centers around the world running on the Akamai connected cloud or Linode. We have multiple deployment options. But that's going to happen in under a minute. And if you want additional environments, all you have to do is create a new branch in GitHub and we will deploy that environment for you in a matter of seconds. That's Zuplo Lightspeed Tour. Thanks, folks. Find out more at zuplo.com.